Hamas's stunning reaction to Trump warning on Gaza Truce, following reports that Israel has conditionally accepted the proposal. What happens next could define not only the fate of Gaza, but also the geopolitical landscape ahead of the 2024 U.S. elections. Earlier this week, Donald Trump made a bold declaration that Israel had agreed to the terms of a proposed 60-day ceasefire, one which he claimed would allow for the release of hostages, de-escalation of military operations, and renewed humanitarian efforts across Gaza. He warned Hamas in blunt terms, stating, "It will not get better, it will only get worse if you reject this opportunity." That statement, while brief, carried enormous weight, both as a diplomatic signal and a political maneuver. But the reaction from Hamas was anything but passive. In a carefully worded response released through their political office, Hamas confirmed that they had received the proposal, mediated by Qatar and Egypt. But rather than accepting it outright, the group insisted that any initiative must guarantee a complete and permanent end to the war, not just a temporary pause. They further demanded the full withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip and a clear framework for lifting the blockade that has crippled the region for over a decade. This was not a rejection, but it also wasn't the acceptance Trump had called for. Instead, it was a signal that Hamas is open to negotiation, but only under terms that reshape the conflict's long-term outcome. The leadership emphasized that a temporary ceasefire without real guarantees would only delay further suffering, not resolve it. Meanwhile, Israeli officials have offered a more complex picture. While some reports suggest Israel has agreed in principle to the U.S.-backed deal, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and members of his coalition have made it clear they do not support any agreement that allows Hamas to remain in power. For Netanyahu, dismantling Hamas has become the primary military objective, one he says must be achieved before any meaningful political resolution is considered. Still, under intense pressure from Western allies and growing domestic fatigue over the prolonged conflict, Israel has left the door open to limited ceasefire talks. This internal division within the Israeli leadership mirrors the fractured nature of the war itself, where military goals, political survival, and humanitarian crises collide. For Trump, this moment represents more than a policy issue. It's a high-stakes political gamble. With his sights clearly set on reclaiming the presidency, he is positioning himself not just as a candidate, but as a global negotiator. The big, beautiful deal, as some of his supporters have begun to call it, would give him a major foreign policy credential ahead of the election, especially if he can claim credit for brokering a ceasefire where others have failed. But the risks are just as significant. If Hamas refuses to accept the deal, or if Israel backs away from its conditional agreement, the plan could unravel quickly. Moreover, Trump's warning that rejecting the deal would lead to worse outcomes could be interpreted as a green light for more aggressive Israeli action, escalating the situation even further. Behind the scenes, diplomatic channels are working non-stop. Qatar and Egypt are continuing indirect talks with both sides, hoping to refine the proposal and secure firm commitments. Mediators are focusing on several key issues: the timeline and process for hostage releases, the phased withdrawal of troops, delivery of humanitarian aid, and future political governance of Gaza. Adding to the pressure is the humanitarian toll. Over 57,000 Palestinians have reportedly been killed since the conflict escalated last year, with vast portions of Gaza reduced to rubble. Aid groups are warning of famine-like conditions in the north and total collapse of medical services. The potential for a ceasefire, even a temporary one, offers a desperately needed window for relief operations and civilian evacuations. On the Israeli side, the return of hostages remains one of the most sensitive and emotional issues. Families of those still held in Gaza are urging the government to accept any deal that brings their loved ones home. Reports suggest that about 50 hostages remain alive, though some intelligence estimates say the number could be lower. As of now, no formal agreement has been signed, Both sides remain locked in what can only be described as a diplomatic standoff, with the world watching closely. The next 72 hours will be critical. If Hamas agrees to a modified version of the plan, it could trigger a new phase in the conflict, one focused on reconstruction and political negotiation. If they refuse, the war is likely to intensify. What's clear is that this moment marks a turning point. Trump's entry into the Gaza ceasefire talks has added a new layer of political complexity and, possibly, a new pathway forward. Whether that path leads to peace or to further bloodshed depends on what happens next behind closed doors in Doha, Cairo, and Jerusalem. Stay tuned for more verified, in-depth updates on the Gaza conflict, international diplomacy, and 2024 election developments right here.